High street pharmacists are often seen as pillars of the community, trusted, respected and highly regulated. But an undercover investigation by this programme 3 years ago found that some were illegally selling prescription drugs with huge implications for patient safety. Well, now we're bringing you an update on that investigation, which led to the UK's biggest ever crackdown on such malpractice. Lynn reports.
Prescription drugs, like potentially hazardous tranquilizers a doctor gives you.
Why have you been selling Valium over the counter?
3 years ago, Inside Out carried out a major investigation.
Can you leave, please?
Here's your problem, because you were doing it. You were selling it.
Leave, please.
We uncovered a dangerous black market trade. More die from abuse of these drugs than cocaine and ecstasy combined.
Well, we've got you secretly recorded doing it, so how can you explain that?
I'm not...
But this black market wasn't online. It was run by trusted pharmacists in the heart of the high street.
And these were the men and women risking patients' lives, selling prescription drugs before they'd seen a doctor. We found 10 in total, accused at the time of acting like small-time drug pushers.
The regulator, the GPhC, took the BBC's evidence of what we uncovered in West London, and it led to its biggest crackdown to date. At the start of our investigation, we wanted to see if we could buy a common antibiotic, amoxicillin. Its misuse can be dangerous, with fears of oversupply, as this doctor told us.
Imagine if your child gets an infection and you go to the GP and your child gets put an antibiotic that doesn't work. It may not work because your child has developed a resistance to it. That resistance has come about by people misusing the antibiotic in general.
So amoxicillin must have a prescription proving a doctor's been seen. Selling it without one breaks the law and the pharmacist's code of conduct.
I'm wanting amoxicillin.
Which strain?
500.
You used it before?
Yeah. How much?
650.
The casualness with which Ghansham Hiriani hands over a prescription-only medicine was labelled reprehensible. What's more worrying, his fitness to practice hearing was told 24 years ago he was caught selling morning after pills with no prescription. At the time, his words were, "I'll never do it again for as long as I live." He was convicted and fined £750 and suspended for 12 months by the GPhC. Another 3 chemists and an assistant sold similar drugs. Beta Faisalahi from Craig Thompson Pharmacy and Paul Healy from Al Razi Pharmacy both got 12 months. Counter assistant Zakia Hanoud from Al Razi Pharmacy, a police caution. And Mohammed Abdul Razak from Saphir Pharmacy, a 6-month suspension, which he's appealing. And they didn't stop there. Some even sold us highly addictive and potentially dangerous drugs like Valium. Josh told us at the time that he'd been taking them for 40 years. With symptoms so severe, he struggled to work, have relationships, or live independently when he tried to withdraw.
Hyperventilation, panic attacks, sometimes sick, seizures around the waist. I personally cannot think of a worse type of torture. If you stop taking this medication, you're going to go through sheer hell. I just cannot believe that somebody like a pharmacist who you would ultimately respect for their knowledge would even consider giving such a serious and dangerous drug over the counter to anybody.
One of the pharmacists who happily did was Chawan Shaida. This is how he sold us potentially dangerous Valium, as if it was chewing gum.
الفاليوم موجود فاليوم نبي فاليوم
بسعره 85 باوند فيه 50
50 حبة أهم شيء تكون حاجة أوريجينال ما أحبش
لا أوريجينال فاليوم ألماني شكل دوش.
And he did so time and again. In his fitness to practice hearing, he said the incidents were isolated and caused no harm. The chair of the panel disagreed.
He did it for personal gain. He neglected the interests of patients. The public will be shocked by Mr. Scheider's behaviour.
Here's the moment we caught up with him.
Lynn from the BBC. Do you know what that is?
No.
That's tablets of Valium that we purchased without a prescription from your pharmacy?
It's impossible.
It's impossible, is it? Well, we've got you secretly recorded doing it, so how can you explain that?
I'm not.
Shaida joined 2 other pharmacists receiving serious penalties. Zara Hussein from Saphir Pharmacy sold other prescription-only medicines, the GPhC said, bringing the pharmacy profession into disrepute. And Rafif Saeed from Al Farabi falsified records trying to hide her illegal sales. The GPhC said she had not told the truth with very serious misconduct. All 3 are appealing now after paying the ultimate price to protect the public.
The implications of being struck off are huge. Effectively, it means that the pharmacist isn't allowed to practice anymore. But one of the pharmacists that we exposed took that decision all the way to the top.
Hussein Rasool supplied us with scores of dangerous tablets.
Why have you been selling Oromorph, which has morphine in it?
And also a bottle of Oromorph, which contains morphine, sought by drug addicts as it's a bit like taking heroin.
Opioid drugs, that's things like Oromorph, so heroin-like drugs, have a very high street value. They are extremely dangerous in the wrong hands. They're very addictive. They can do untold damage and they can kill. I'm horrified at the idea of anybody being prepared to sell this for cash. The idea that a registered pharmacist who's gone through all that training, who's under the auspices of their own professional society, should do something so criminal and so dangerous is, I just can't believe it. It's a controlled drug for very good reasons. Anybody who is told to take as much of it as they like is playing Russian roulette with their life.
And guess what? He sold our researcher the biggest bottle and told him to take whatever dose he liked.
If you want 5 ml, تاخذ 2.5 milli. If you need 10 ml.
The GPhC watched the BBC's footage showing him making the sale, along with the numerous other drugs he sold us illegally. In his fitness to practice hearing, Rasool said he had patients' interests at heart, and that the Oromorph may have been stolen by the BBC's researcher. The chair said,
"His behaviour was serious and shocking. We're unpersuaded he had insight into the consequences of what he was doing, how dangerous it could be to patients and the public. Without the BBC exposure, it would have continued."
Rasool was struck off, but he appealed to the High Court, saying he should have only received a temporary ban. It was rejected, setting a precedent for similar malpractice cases in future.
It's an important case because it sends a strong message to pharmacists, those who felt tempted to behave in the same way or did not realise how serious it was. It wasn't just the effect on the individual pharmacist that had to be taken into account. It was also the effect of public confidence in the profession of pharmacy.
All the pharmacists have now been dealt with, apart from one, Murtaza Ghulam Hussein, who allegedly sold controlled drug temazepam and received an interim suspension after the BBC report. Those that were temporarily suspended are now back on the register.
The striking off or suspension of so many pharmacists linked into our investigation was the biggest crackdown on this kind of malpractice in the GPhC's history. But has the warnings sent out by that stopped it entirely?
Since our investigation, we've heard reports it's still happening, but more under the radar. The GPhC used the BBC's evidence to push government for more powers to crack down, such as more surveillance of rogue pharmacists. Some of the ones we exposed were making astronomical markups on the real cost of the drugs. Never before have so many faced the consequences of such a dangerous and lucrative trade.